looking good. The UK has diploma mills too. We'll look at that. Canada wants to push further and negotiate the WHO pandemic treaty, and we'll look at that as well. There was a meeting, and everybody was talking about, oh, boo, we failed with passing this whole thing, and Canada said, don't worry, we want to keep negotiating. So darn it, right? Darn it. There's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We have to look at one of the big problems facing Canada. Is not just facing Canada, it's happening all across the West, because Western politicians have been, I guess, terrorized by the deep state, and they are willing to do anything to avoid being held accountable for the damage they've done to the country. If the citizens found out how bad it really was, holy smokeronies, we'd be mad, I think. And so it's happening everywhere. And I think we're embroiled in a full-scale invasion of the West. And as I said at the beginning, the response to the full-scale invasion of the West from our liberal leaders here is period bracelets. I wish I was joking. I wish I was kidding, but that's it. That's everybody. And I've got also Ahmed Hassan, Melanie Jolie, Seamus O'Regan, all of the top brass of the Liberal Party are saying, oh, look at our nice period bracelets, everybody. I remember going to England when I was a kid, and I think I was probably, 7 or 8, old enough to have watched commercials. And in Canada at the time, women's products like pads and tampons, that was on television, and it wasn't something that even stood out to me at all, right? Do you remember the two pads side by side, and they had a little cup of blue water, and they poured the blue water in there? I always thought it was funny. So, and they'd squeeze the pad, and I thought, man, like this is something. This is very absorbent. And I went to England, and one of these commercials came on, and the men got up and left the room, and I was like, what? This is crazy. Anyway, it's a very different mentality now than 25 years ago, 40 years ago, 35 years ago, because at that point in time, that was seen as, private, something that you keep to yourself, and so on and so forth. And now people are wearing menstrual cycle bracelets to reduce, what are they calling it? Oh my gosh, there's a word. Hold on. Stigma. The word is stigma. To reduce stigma. This does not reduce stigma. This does not do anything to help anybody. Okay. This does nothing to help anybody with anything. Let's start in Spain. Radio Genoa says, Spanish woman tells us that in many areas of Spain, there are no longer Spaniards, but only fake asylum seekers. She also says that crime is skyrocketing in these areas. Our politicians hate us. That's one. Okay. Rishi Sunak, right? The prime minister until the end of the election cycle, because I don't think he's going to remain prime minister, pledges to get rid of rip-off degree courses after it emerges that some courses at certain universities aren't producing skilled workers Britain needs. Oh, are they coming to England and then as students and then just working and then bringing their whole family after they have 3 years of time to be aligned with the country or whatever it is? Same thing's happening in Canada, right? Steve says, Jeepers Creepers, Bulgarians claim estimated 200 million pound in fraudulent benefits. And all they did was fly to the UK once, provide a fake document, then fly home. We completely regenerated a rural town, and we only caught them because of a rural Bulgarian Cooper. So how many more? So the Bulgarian town that boomed from UK's biggest benefit fraud. Like, that's freaking crazy. They came to the UK. They're stealing tax dollars and taking it back to Bulgaria and revitalizing their living like towns. The UK's biggest ever benefit fraud scheme was uncovered after a lone Bulgarian police officer, Copper, told British authorities, oh my gosh, the city was suddenly awash with cash and criminals were living like barons, the Telegraph can reveal. Well, if you go back a couple of seconds, you can pause it and read the rest of that article. Apologies. I can't read it because it's decided that I'm not paid, and well, they're not wrong. So I know there's a thing I can do, and somebody sent me how to do it, and I did it, and I promised to bookmark it, and I can't remember. It used to go right here, but like it was supposed to go beside the Bracelets thing. This is a speed reading app, so that like speed reads. It doesn't speed read for you, but it makes the words pop up and you can adjust the speed. But I'm a pretty fast reader anyway, so I stopped using it. Apologies. If you send it to me again, I will put it in the bookmarks bar right beside the Bracelet app, or I may just change this Bracelet thing right there. But apologies about that. Natalia says, I'm 1,000 kilometers from my city, but still within my own province. I've eaten at 2 fast food restaurants so far. This is in Canada, both large chains, both 100% Indian employees. This is no longer anywhere near a coincidence. How is it allowed to be so blatantly racist in hiring practices and get away with it? I've been seeing posts of people on Reddit. There's a person who's mirroring posts on Twitter here from Reddit talking about how terrible things are in Canada and how unaffordable they are. So this guy got fired and he can't find a job, 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 and he's on EI, but EI is running out now, and he can't find a job. And so this is a story. So on one side of things, certain groups of people can't find work, and on the other side of things, temporary foreign workers are skyrocketing, right? Temporary students are skyrocketing, and they can find work. Why can they find work? Because people are buying franchises and then firing the people who formerly worked there, and then hiring their brothers, family, sisters, bringing them over from India or other places. So that's what's going on, and nobody's doing anything to stop it, right? And saying this is no longer anywhere near a coincidence. Yeah, we are paying for an invasion. We are paying to be invaded. That's what's happening. And the government at both levels of municipal too, but I'm talking provincial and federal, are trying to say that all we have to do to fix this problem is build more houses. And that's a lie, because building more houses does not fix the problem. Building more houses gives more capacity to bring more immigrants in. That's it. You're not going to get the house. I'm not going to get the house, right? The only people who are going to get the house are the same people getting the jobs. You see? Because they have connections, right? They have connections and they have people working for them. So like if your job is to house this migrant, you're on the phone, you know everybody who's anybody in the city, and if they've got an apartment coming up, you get that phone call first. You see how this works? Because you're guaranteeing money and rent, whereas if I want an apartment, it's my responsibility to call around, it's my responsibility to meet with people, it's my responsibility to prove to this guy that I'm going to pay my bills. Meanwhile, the other lady's got 10 other apartments and she pays on time, and she pays a higher rent than everybody else too, right? She's going to get the call back. That's why it's her job, right? And you don't have the resources, you don't have the track record, you don't have the connections, you lose, because the government is subsidizing people to find housing for these people. For real, no word of a lie. I wish I was kidding, man. I wish I was lying. Paul Calandra says, see below for a joint statement on the national housing strategy. And this is Paul Calandra, who's the MPP in Ontario. And he's the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and Sean Fraser is the Housing Minister. He's a failed housing minister as well. Canada and Ontario recognize that our collaboration is imperative to solving the housing crisis. This is why we're pleased to share that an agreement has been reached on a revised action plan from Ontario that will unlock $357 million of federal funding under the National Housing Strategy, NHS. Ontario has submitted a revised action plan under the bilateral agreement, which provides more robust data and insights as to which housing projects benefited from provincial investment. Ontario has included new measures in its action plan which better reflect Ontario's funding delivery model as the only jurisdiction which flows the funds through municipal service managers. These measures include establishing provincial supply targets with service managers, directing funding towards new projects, setting annual goals, and implementing robust data collection and reporting mechanisms. Additionally, Ontario will submit an action plan for 25 to 28 by December 31st, 24 to secure continued federal funding for the remainder of the 10-year National Housing Strategy Agreement. Solving the housing crisis requires a Team Canada approach. We will continue to work together along with our municipal partners to make sure the people of Ontario have the homes they need. This is not going to solve the problem. It's going to make the problem worse. It's not going to help anything. It's not going to help. A 10-year National Housing Strategy Agreement, it's going to fail big time. And I mean, like, hopefully this government is removed, but I am not convinced that Pierre Poilievre is going to do anything differently at all. I'm not. Melissa says the PEI Canadian immigration protesters have now built an encampment outside the provincial government buildings in Charlottetown. So yeah, not great, right? So they are starting to build encampments just like those pro-Palestinian protesters, because they appear to be getting away with it, right? So encampments are the way to go. Can't use a truck, but hey, if I've got a tent here, right? Like you can't arrest me, right? Which is strange, because they did that. They arrested the truckers for much less than what the pro-Palestinian protesters are doing now. And the pro-Palestinian protesters have been going on for months and months and months. Nobody cares. Nobody cares even a little tiny bit. Isn't that interesting to note? I think it is. Here is Justin Trudeau being asked about, hey, have you noticed that kids can't buy any houses? And his response is what you would expect. About a minute long Justin Trudeau warning. Here we go.
Years old, still lives at home with us, college grad, good paying job. He laughs off the idea that he'll ever own a house, a detached house like the one he lives in now that we were able to afford 25 years ago. What do you say to them? Do you say give up on detached ownership and go for something smaller and it's a dream that's dead? You're never going to get there? Let me ask how you feel about it.
Obviously, I've heard from Canadians like your son across the country who are really worried about the housing market, who wonder whether or not they'll ever be able to afford a home. One of the challenges we're facing in Canada is our population with immigration and other things has been growing over the past years. And
because he created policies that increased immigration to a point that was beyond Canada's capacity to facilitate. We can't serve these people. We can't house these people. We can't do what we need to do as a province to assimilate these people into life. We have 10 cities, for crying out loud. And he's pretending like, oh yeah, well, this population thing's totally out of my control. Moron.
And housing construction hasn't kept up, which is a real problem. And that's why one of the initiatives we're working on, $4 billion towards municipalities in order to double the construction of new housing over the coming years. This is something that is going to help. Whether it's enough or directly going to be helping your son, we'll have to see.
No, he knows that it's not. He knows it's not enough, and it's not going to help her son. And it's not enough at all because it doesn't solve the damn problem, right? Like if you went to a doctor and you said, like, listen, I cut off my fingers, but here are the fingers, reattach them, and he put a Band-Aid on your hand, like on your stump, that's not solving the freaking problem. I don't know if you can reattach fingers, but you get my meaning, right? Like, he's not doing the necessary actions to save your fingers. He's just putting a Band-Aid on it saying, oh man, that rehabilitation is going to be real tough. Sucks to be you, eh? And I mean, maybe if you lose fingers, maybe that's going to be the case. Have you seen the Dawn Wall? Like, that guy's story. When you're watching the movie, if you've never seen the Dawn Wall, it's about a climbing guy who was like a climbing phenom, and then things happen, and you think that it's going to destroy his climbing career, but it only makes him even better, which is weird, but fair enough. But it's unbelievable. Like, when that part of the documentary happened, I was like, no way. No way. Should I tell you what it is? I don't want to spoil it. Okay, spoiler alert. Okay. Climbing requires like your fingers, right? And you can cut them off on a table saw. Right? I was like, what? This guy was what? If you've never seen the Dawn Wall, go watch the Dawn Wall. But anyway, they're not doing anything to address the problem, is what I'm saying. Here is Sean Fraser. He says the Conservative housing plan. Now, I'm just showing you this, not because Sean Fraser, like not because the exchange is particularly good, but I want to show you this because the Conservative leader, the Liberal housing minister is going after the Conservative leader for political points here. This guy's asking, the cost of housing and blah, 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 blah. And Fraser goes after Poilievre for not having any kind of plan and trying to make him sound like an idiot who is not prepared to do whatever's necessary or whatever. That's all. Like, I just want to highlight that because Fraser's not trying to solve the problem. They're not struggling towards a solution. They're just exchanging political barbs, right? But the question, I think, is genuine enough. But Fraser's response is just trying to attack. That's it. And not that it doesn't make sense, but they're not trying to solve any problems. Here you go.
They put the tax back on the construction of middle-class apartments.
I can just imagine the setting when the leader of the Conservatives sat down with the napkin he wrote his housing plan upon and thought, what can I do to address the housing crisis? Idea one, raise taxes on home construction. You can't make this stuff up, Mr. Speaker, but wait, that's not all. They also plan to cut funding for affordable housing. They also plan to cut funding for cities that build more housing, and they plan to cut the...
Idea one for the Liberals is, there's not enough housing. Let's import more people from foreign countries and have them live in tents during the wintertime. That's the mental giants we're dealing with here. Like, come on. Period bracelets. That's the level of intelligence we're dealing with here. Okay, these people are grade school at best. It's unbelievable. Seamus O'Regan says people don't bring their own toilet paper to work, so they shouldn't have to bring their own pads and tampons. I like when I get home and get to use my own toilet paper. I work from home. I get to use my own toilet paper all the time. I used to work in a school. School toilet paper is terrible. And to be honest with you, there was a time where I brought my own toilet paper because I was like, this one ply is just not cutting it. It's just not cutting it, the staff room. Right. So we changed that, says Seamus O'Regan. We put free menstrual products in federally related workplaces. This bracelet is for Menstrual Hygiene Day. What? Like, what? Petrified COVID parent says, what in the right honorable F is wrong with you people? Period bracelets? Holy smoke. Canada is $1.5 trillion in debt, and they want to talk about menstrual hygiene and periods. Ahmed Hassan. Like, these are heavy hitters in the Liberal cabinet, like top end Liberals, okay? The top brass of the Liberal Party. He says, on Menstrual Hygiene Day, we commit to a future where women and girls who menstruate can realize their full potential. Are there women and girls who don't menstruate, Minister? Without the unfair barriers. This means access to menstrual products, education, and advancing sexual and reproductive health rights around the world. No, like all of this sexual health rights around the world, they're pushing abortion. They're not pushing anything but abortion. They're just pushing abortion. It's not appropriate. We shouldn't be spending money there. It's just like pushing foreign wars. Like, oh, the only way for Canada to be free is if we depose Putin in Ukraine. I don't think so. I don't think so. And the only way for Canadian women to have sexual reproductive health rights is if we pay for abortions for third world people in Africa? I don't think so. I really don't think so, and I don't think we should be doing that. So we shouldn't spend money on it. We shouldn't have people there in Africa pushing those things on anybody under the guise of women's health or anything like that. We probably shouldn't be in Africa at all unless we're trading for chocolate or something to that effect, something they produce that we want, right? Then sure, if it's a mutually beneficial trade, right? Like you go to a store, you want to buy some, chocolate bars or something like that. You walk into the convenience store, you pick up the chocolate bar, you hand over the money. They say, thanks, come again. It's like, all right, great, man. We'll see you later, right? But if you exploit them, right? If you start killing people, if you start saying, that convenience store down the street is making more money than you, and if we bankroll you, you could just take it over. We shouldn't do those things. We shouldn't do those things. And yet we focus on these things, pretending that it's important and it's not. Here's Marcy Ian, again, another heavy hitter, former television presenter, now Liberal MP. And she says, periods are a fact of life and everyone deserves access to affordable menstrual products. Then why are you taxing everything? Thanks to the Menstrual Equity Fund, over 3 million people across Canada have been able to access this basic need. 3 million, eh? Population's 41 million. What's that? 20.5 million women, roughly, right? 50%, roughly. So 3 million, eh? Ooh, that's a huge amount. What are you doing? Like, such a waste of money, such a waste of time. Why is everybody doing this? Goldie, who's an MPP, Ontario provincial politician, she's an Iranian Canadian, and she's a conservative politician, and she says, if my male caucus colleagues wore menstruation bracelets to the Ontario legislature, I'd tear them off their wrists myself. So I hope so. I hope so. She says, liberal men wearing period bracelets doesn't advance women's health rights. You know what would? The federal government cutting the HST on feminine hygiene products like we do in Ontario. Instead, they're busy taking photos wearing period bracelets, and you're falling for it. I don't think anybody's falling for it. But she highlights here is their tax on feminine hygiene products in Ontario. And it says, yes, the retailer only collects 5% federal part of the HST for the menstrual cycle. So only the feds want taxes on that. Provincially, no tax. And here is Kirk, and he says, what is going on in Canada? Bracelets for the length of menstrual cycle, period-friendly world. The Liberals have gone insane. We need an election ASAP. Our elections are rigged. I wish they weren't rigged, but they are rigged. The 15-minute cities is a series of concerning things that I'm seeing that are bubbling up. And it's, like I said, do mine eyes deceive me? Is this real? Like, I feel like David after dentist, the scream and all. This is Edmonton, 15-minute cities. CTV News. Here we go.
Of planning, city administration is presenting its vision to accommodate a population of 2 million people through 15-minute cities. 3 days of public hearings on the plan began at City Hall this morning. Shailen Skulski has more.
I'm here to express my concerns.
Shelley Motorshead is one of more than 70 speakers scheduled to be heard at City Hall. Over 3 days, councillors will hear from residents and representatives from the construction industry, childcare, community leagues, and students on administration's plan to deal with a growing population.
We are building a cohesive city with opportunities for local living.
Population is rapidly growing, and we have to be able to accommodate for that. Right now, the plans we have are kind of Frankenstein together over decades.
The 15 new district plans and corresponding bylaws will replace 54 existing planning documents dating back to the 1980s.
Our city is growing, and the more we can accommodate within existing infrastructure and existing neighborhoods, better it is for the taxpayers as well.
Administration says the goal is to accommodate 600,000 new residents in redeveloped areas, with 50% of all new home units added through infill. The plan also calls for half of all future travel to be done by transit, and for residents to access all their daily needs within 15 minutes. Not everyone supports the plan.
My understanding is that this means I will need to stay within my district to meet all my needs so that the city can meet its climate plan objectives.
I don't think Edmontonians can afford to be part of a renovation experiment of this size so quickly.
I think unfortunately a lot of the district plan in particular have been derailed by 15-minute cities, conspiracy theories, World Economic Forums, etc. At the end of the day, this is about land use.
Others were concerned about
Agenda 2030 is about land use.
Possible impacts on the River Valley, affordable housing, and called for stricter rules for developers. Approved policies will be reviewed this summer and could come into effect by fall. Shailen Skulski.
That's a fast timeline. 15-minute cities by the fall, Edmonton. Are you paying attention yet? Do you care yet? Will you follow along? Here's, they want to, once they have you in your 15-minute city, they want to starve you. So in Iowa, Des Moines, Iowa, more than 4 million chickens are to be killed after a case of bird flu was detected at a large egg farm. So bird flu detected at an egg farm, killed 4 million chickens. I mean, chickens are quick growing, I guess, so you can replace them fairly quickly. But if they just keep killing your stock, it's very expensive. Like, this isn't cheap. 4 million chickens, even if they're $1 each, like they're super cheap to buy, $1 each, right? That's a lot of money. It's not a small amount of money. Like, it's a lot of money, right? So we are in a situation where they are going after us, and they say, oh, it's a conspiracy theory, until it's not. Remember, no lockdowns. No one knows until everybody knows. That's what's going on. And like, the pieces are moving. And my favorite analogy is, we're standing on the football field. They've snapped the ball. They're running in the end zone and they're dancing. And we're like, man, that looks important. Seems like they're doing things. They're doing things. The food professor says, if grocers lose 1.8% of sales due to theft and their margins are less than 3.5%, that's a real problem. Organized crime frequently use internal employees to steal thousands of dollars of food for the black market. So yeah, and it's not imperceptible, but it's hard to tell right away when food goes missing, right? Especially and food gets eaten. So pretty wild insider stuff. If food security, if people having access to cheap, affordable food is a problem, you'd think they'd stop taxing the production of food, the transport of food, and the rest, right? You think? Disruptions on the Horizon is a Government of Canada publication. Somebody sent it to me this morning saying, you might find this interesting. I did. Thank you. And so this is the 2024 report. And this says, Policy Horizon Canada is the Government of Canada's Centre of Excellence in Foresight. So this is our Nostradamus, everyone, right? It's a really big shoe. It's a really big shoe. I just got that joke. Our mandate is to empower the Government of Canada with a future-oriented mindset and outlook to strengthen decision-making. The content of this document does not necessarily represent the views of the Government of Canada or participating departments and agencies. Okay, so this is just information, and the departments can use it as they see fit. However, they have a foreword and blah, 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 blah. And I thought, well, let's look at what the disruptions. So these are the predicted disruptions for 2024. And my question remains, if you see these problems, why would you tax energy? Why would you tax food? Why would you tax these things that people need in order to make things harder for people who are trying to get by? It seems wrong-headed. 2024 disruptions on the horizon. Below is a list of 35 potential disruptions assessed in the 24 survey. They appear in alphabetical order by domain: society, economy, environment, health, and policy, and geopolitics. So society is aging population has no support. So living circumstances for many elderly people become unbearable as the population ages and labor market conditions worsen. AI intelligence runs wild. This I don't believe, and I told you why I didn't believe it yesterday, and the reason I didn't believe it is, and I'm gonna, you know what, I don't think I put the link in the description yesterday, so I'm gonna do it again. Hold on. Okay, so this is the stable cascade link, and if you try and do like a children's story, creating a children's story with an AI image creator is very difficult because you can't create a character in successive poses. It's very, very difficult to wield the tool. The tool is not, it doesn't lend itself easily to that. Now, there are certain things that it can do really well, like translation. There are a bunch of things AI can do well, but again, you need vision and somebody managing the AI in the background. Now, like, you could have a situation where there are many people who have that kind of vision and can manage AI like that, but the AI needs to be very sophisticated. And I don't think we've seen AI sophisticated at that level yet. So my premise is I find myself competent. I try and produce things, and I find using tools like that fun and interesting. And so I try and use them the way they're being sold to us, which is AI is going to be develop rapidly and its usage becomes pervasive. Society cannot keep up and people do not widely understand where and how it's being used. Well, I want to understand, how can you realistically use this to produce a children's book, a very simple children's book? Because the whole encompassing idea is fairly easy. You know, like, the kid goes for lunch and he eats some French fries and he's happy about the French fries and whatever it is, right? You can create a story that's fairly real and benign, easy, 10 pages or something like that. And I couldn't do that. And if I can't do that, but on the flip side, lawyers using AI to proofread their work with predetermined settings and stuff, sure, that kind of stuff AI is really good at. So there's going to be certain situations and use cases where it's going to make an impact. And it may be confounding, but it's still, it's not where they're trying to say it is, I don't think. Basic needs go unmet. Downward social mobility is the norm, so people cannot enter the housing market and face increasingly insecure work arrangements. Many Canadians find themselves in lower socioeconomic conditions than their parents. Food is scarce. If food is scarce, why are you taxing it? Men are in crisis. They're saying boys and men face unprecedented levels of education dropout, unemployment, and loneliness as traditional gender roles are challenged. This is an attack on men. Like, traditional gender roles have remained exactly where they were before, the same, 100%. Women still prefer to do what women prefer to do. Men still prefer what men prefer to do. And like, all the incentives in the world can change a little bit on the edges, but it's not going to change what women and men are. People cannot tell what is true and what is not. That's on purpose, and the government knows it. Values-based clashes divide society. The economy says biodata is widely monetized. No. Energy is inaccessible and unreliable, only because they want it to be. Homemade bioweapons go viral. Oh, that sounds fun. A trend emerges whereby individuals can easily create cheap but powerful bioweapons with readily available technology and minimal infrastructure. You could do a comic book with just like these as your subject, like one little tiny comic book about the nightmare that these people are envisioning Canada is. Infrastructure and property are uninsurable because of climate change. Yeah, bullshit. Large economies face public debt crisis. Yeah, because they've spent us into the crisis. People cannot afford to live on their own. Space is commercialized and underregulated. Space. Yeah, right. The North experiences an economic boom. Vital natural resources are scarce. Biodiversity is lost and ecosystems collapse. Emergency response is overwhelmed. Geoengineering takes off. Oh yeah, well, I've seen it take off and I'm not a fan. So I think if we stop doing that, things will be better. Healthy environments are a human right. Oh yeah, sure. Many Canadian regions become uninhabitable and antibiotics no longer work. Healthcare system collapse. Mental health is in crisis. And billionaires run the world for politics and geopolitics. Canadian national unity unravels. Yeah. Civil war erupts in the United States. They desperately want that. Cyber attack disable critical infrastructure. Democratic systems break down. Indigenous people govern unceded territory. International alliances are in constant flux. And world war breaks out. So, I mean, a really happy prediction for 2024, right? Here's a bank in Ohio, Youngstown, Ohio. People are talking about how there's no firebomb, like there's no fireball coming out the side. It seems like the fireball was contained underground. We're seeing the bomb wasn't here. The bomb was below. That's what people on the internet are saying. I don't know if that's true. Here is this. If you've seen this, well, I don't know, but if you haven't seen this, yesterday at 14:45 in Youngstown, Ohio, and people were saying it's a message. I don't know. I don't know about that. To 45, obviously, to Donald Trump. Everything's about Trump, especially in Youngstown, Ohio. So the bank blew up. Here we go. So, yeah, that's not so good, right? Apparently there were people buried in the rubble. Not so good. Not so good. 15-minute cities, stuff like this just kind of plays in because like, oh yeah, there's a boat and it rammed into a bridge and the bridge collapsed. So that's billions and billions of dollars and it was insured, but the government's going to pay for it anyway. Weird. Was it a terrorist attack? Don't ask dumb questions, right? Oh, well, sorry, I didn't know it was a dumb question. And stuff like this. Well, you know, banks blow up all the time. Gas leak? Bomb? Right? Don't ask questions, right? So it's very, very interesting to me. All this stuff is interesting to me because nothing is as it seems. And if you ask questions, then you're the problem. And all of that's weird. That's weird, don't you think? I think it's weird. Very strange. National Post is reporting young people are taught to hate Canada. Mandatory service could fix that. Do you want to draft in Canada? People will love Canada again because we'll make them. If people weren't taught to hate Canada in schools, then they wouldn't hate Canada. I think that's pretty simple. But maybe it's just me. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful